Well, today was a pretty big day, ladies and gentlemen. This was the most important day that we are going to have all off season. A ton of these wide receivers, immaculate. Could not have imagined it better. The best landing spots possible. You had some other things that we are going to have to talk about that came out of left field that nobody was expecting. We have players rising. We have players falling. And I want to go through. I want to talk about it all. Now, let's only look at the fantasy relevant guys that we are going to have here. Starting at the very top, Caleb Williams. I don't think we need to say anything. This has been priced in all offseason. We knew Williams was going to be a Bear. The only thing that we're going to have to talk about is the situation in Chicago now that you're adding in Rome. So we'll talk about that when we get to Rome at pick 9, which I know a lot of people are super excited about, right? Now, let's go over and let's look at a Mr. Jayden Daniels. Essentially, the entire conversation centered around Daniels versus May. Daniels versus May, Daniels versus May. Everybody was freaking out leading up till today. Who was Washington actually going to go with? I've always said, okay, I'm an idiot. How am I supposed to figure out which one of these quarterback prospects is the better guy? How am I supposed to figure out how I'm going to rank these guys coming into it? So what I was essentially saying is, okay, well, whoever Washington takes, that's who I'm going to be taking in Dynasty rookie drafts. If you have Washington, in my mind, a better situation than New England based off all the offensive weapons that you have there with Terry McLaurin as well as Jahan Dotson, and you have the front office for Washington signing off that they prefer one talent over the other, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to rank Jayden Daniels over Drake May for fantasy football purposes. Obviously, it does not hurt the fact that Jayden Daniels has a ridiculous amount of rushing upside. Now, let's move over to our next guy. And as we go to this, please, if you have not done so already, hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. This is our first upload in like a week on this channel. But let's look at Drake May here. With Drake May, the issue that you're going to find is while, yes, this quarterback that has rushing upside, he goes top 3 in the NFL draft. You have all the job security in the world. Film guys absolutely love him, and obviously he has a ton of upside. The issue would be centered around the fact that you're stepping into a situation where Demario Douglas is your number one weapon. Maybe you throw Ramondre Stevenson in there. So, I mean, what you're really having to hope for, we're going to talk about A.D. Mitchell at the end of this. We're going to talk about Ladd at the end of this. But you're really going to have to hope that New England ends up pulling the trigger with the wide receiver at the top of the second round. Because in my mind, y'all know, we talk about it all the time, what I look for with these quarterbacks. We're going to talk about this with Penix. We're going to have to talk about this with McCarthy because I think I'm smart enough to realize that I'm dumb enough where I'm not going to be able to evaluate these guys coming out of college, and I'm not going to be able to know more than NFL talent evaluators. And instead, what I'm looking at the quarterback position in particular is draft capital, which indicates NFL job security in the amount of seasons that they should start, even if they are a bust at the NFL level. We're going to be combining that draft capital with the situation that they're stepping into and the rushing upside of the quarterback, because you can be a bad NFL quarterback and still be effective in fantasy if you're going to run the ball a ton. Go look at Justin Fields. So if we're looking at Drake May versus Jayden Daniels, Daniels is a little bit of better draft capital, 2 versus 3, not a big deal. I would say he's a little bit of a better situation. And at the same time, he has more rushing upside. So I'm going to go with Daniels, but May is still exciting. The main issue is that situation is going to be so damn bad, but obviously it's going to be someone who starts year 1. Marvin Harrison Jr. 4, not really a surprise to anybody. Really, the only thing that would have shaken things up is if Minnesota actually had to trade up to pick 4 to go get McCarthy. Obviously, they don't. But yeah, Harrison, I think, was minus 250 to be an Arizona Cardinal. It's a pretty damn good situation where you have all the target volume available. I mean, while Kyler obviously has had his struggles, Kyler hasn't been a super efficient quarterback. At the same time, if you are looking at what you have in comparison to like Malik Neighbors, we'll talk about in a second, Kyler's still an above average quarterback at the next level. And Harrison, locked and loaded, Sammy Watkins, Julio Jones level wide receiver prospect. So, I mean, he is already being drafted in like the top of round 2 of underdog redraft leagues. I mean, he is already priced in as if he's a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty. If you're looking at my rankings in Dynasty, I am personally going to have St. Brown, Chase, Lamb, and Jefferson all ahead of Harrison. But then right after that, I think at pick 5, you can go ahead and you can put Marvin Harrison Jr. there. Not too much of a surprise, right? Now, going over to pick 5, I know a lot of people were expecting us to see Neighbors go here, which if that would have happened, that would have been immaculate. Joe Alt goes. Now, it's going to be the only offensive tackle pick that we're going to discuss here. And it's not really because I know a ton about Joe Alt. know that he is going to be some stud left. Of course, I have no freaking idea. But what I do know is, based off the Los Angeles Chargers passing on wide receiver round 1, they don't even go Bowers. So you lose Keenan. You'll lose Mike Williams. You'll lose Austin Eckler. I understand this coaching staff coming in, they're going to go through and they're going to say, yeah, we don't need to push the pace of play as much as we've been doing in years past. Yeah, we don't need to air it out like we've seen with this offense previously. We can slow it down. We can play more balanced football, and we can look to run the ball. But even with that, I still want to assume that Justin Herbert's going to be a much more efficient quarterback than what you're going to have from the average baseline quarterback in the NFL. And you have Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer. Quentin Johnston, I really liked as a prospect coming out of TCU. Clearly, we whiffed. But this was someone who broke out at 18, dominated as a true sophomore, declared as a true junior, went round 1 of the NFL draft, and he's going to be in a pretty damn good situation this next season. Now, obviously, Quentin Johnston was so bad as a rookie, where if you look at all the historical data, it all screams, the man's a bum. He's going to be very bad. He's not righting the ship. He's not turning it around. But I do think that he can be an intriguing, I don't want to say buy low, because I don't know how cheap you're going to get him. Like, let's go through and let's pull up where Quentin Johnston currently is in the expert rankings on the site. So it's flockfantasy.com, of course. You can find all my rankings here, all the rankings for pretty much all the fantasy football creators you watch on YouTube. And if you look at Quentin Johnston right now, he's 147, valued as a 3rd-round pick in drafts. I personally, with all that being said, even with Johnston most likely being a bum, I would rather have Quentin Johnston over Gabe Davis. I would rather have him over Tyler Lockett. I would rather have him over Jerry Jeudy. I would rather have him over Demario Douglas. I'd rather have him over DeAndre Hopkins. I would rather have him over Dontavian Wicks. We're going to talk about Bowers maybe impacting Myers in a second. I would put Quentin Johnston a lot closer to being between, say, like a mid-second round pick in 2024 and a late second round pick. I would have him closer to like wide receiver 40, wide receiver 41, probably wide receiver 42, right? I think he belongs neck and neck with Jahan Dotson, another round 1 wide receiver that looks like he's on the path of being a bust. But I think that sounds like a much more reasonable price tag for Johnston in my mind. So I think that he has to be kind of viewed as a winner here, as gross as that sounds, just based off them not going out there and taking a receiver in round 1. And of course, if you want to check out all those rankings on flockfantasy.com, you can look at community rankings for free whenever you want. But I'll be updating my rankings tomorrow. That way we can help everybody out in rookie drafts immediately. I mean, we already have a ton of rookie draft guides out there. You have the rookie draft guides from Dynasty Land, Fantasy Stock Exchange, Dynasty Domain. They're all on the site. I mean, if you can find the link in the description, in the comment section, code FLOCK will get you 30% off any sub, plus access to the trade calculator, rankings, draft guides. And we actually have a team analyzer on there now as well. And if you use code FLOCK, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team in a podcast and can go through and let you know what I'll be doing in your rookie draft. Now let's go over and let's look at Malik Neighbors. Now, good news, bad news. Bad news, you find yourself with a bad quarterback in Daniel Jones. Good news is that quarterback has nobody else to throw the ball to. Malik Neighbors, obviously, phenomenal wide receiver prospect. He would be the wide receiver 1 in a ton of different draft classes, but he is stuck in a receiving class with Marvin Harrison. He's still getting paid. He went number 6 overall, right? But ultimately, I think clearly it's not as good as what you'd have in Los Angeles. If he was in Los Angeles, I think he'd be like a borderline top 7 wide receiver in Dynasty day 1. I mean, I'd be so freaking excited about him. But let's pull back up the rankings on the site real quick to have an idea of where we are going to end up ranking Neighbors. As I would rather have Malik Neighbors over Jalen Waddle, Brandon Ayuk. We'll talk about Ayuk with the San Francisco decision at the end of the draft in a second, but I'd rather have Neighbors over Tyreek, Olave, Drake London. I'd probably rather have him over A.J. Brown. I'm probably putting Malik Neighbors wide receiver 7-ish. For sure over anybody from Drake London beyond. I think if you're a contending team, I can see the argument for A.J. Brown. If you're a rebuilding team, I can see the argument for Malik Neighbors. Now, let's go over and let's look at our next guy. This is going to be the surprise of the draft. Michael Penix Jr. Pick 8 to a team that, let me pull up this Kirk Cousins contract. So I actually have not looked at the details tonight. I kind of remember to the back of my mind, I think it's like a 2-year deal. I mean, I understand that it's not technically a 2-year deal, but in terms of guaranteed money. Because this is a team that, at least based off their moves this offseason, it seemed like they were going through, they were pushing their chips in the middle. They were saying, we're taking it down. We're winning this year. And now they go, okay, did I say that we were looking to compete this season? No, instead, we're actually going to be playing for 2027. No idea how it happened. I mean, I think maybe Spotrac is seeing a flood in usage right now because the Kirk Cousins contract isn't even loading for me. So it looks like the Kirk Cousins deal gives them an out in 2026. But it's just so weird to give Cousins like $100 million guaranteed to go through and take Penix. So if you're looking at what you're doing with Penix and rookie drafts now, this is a quarterback that is set up with a pretty good situation in that you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, you have Bijan Robinson. You have a young core with bona fide studs. But also, based off Cousins being there and the money they give Cousins, you probably don't have a shot to to start year one. And instead, you're probably looking at 2025, the earliest that you're going to get in as a starter. So if you are a Falcons fan, obviously you should be absolutely pissed. Yes, I mean, I'm not trying to come out here and say that Michael Penix was a great pick for the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think anybody thinks that. But with that being said, from a dynasty fantasy football perspective, I can see me drafting a lot of Michael Penix this year. The thought process behind it is we are assuming that a lot of these rookie quarterbacks, not named CJ Stroud, obviously Stroud turned out to be a league winner, but the majority of these rookie quarterbacks, no matter what, they're not doing anything for you year one in terms of legitimately changing your team into a contending roster. You're either going to win without them. It doesn't really matter. With Penix, his value is going to be very much insulated where it's going to be priced in that he does not play this year. If I can get Michael Penix at the 201, the 202, or even the 112 in a super flex rookie draft, I don't see a world where next offseason he is not worth at least the 112, the 201, or the 202. Yes, you may be kicking the can down the road, but I think you are getting an extremely insulated asset where you only have upside to increase in value. If the Cousins rehab doesn't go well, if Cousins maybe performs poorly, I'm not expecting that to happen. I think the expectation is Cousins plays well year one and Penix doesn't see the field. But if he does see the field and has any success, he's clearly going to be worth a lot more than where you have to draft him at the 111, 112, 201, 202 this year. So I will find myself drafting a considerable amount of Penix in Dynasty Superflex leagues. Does that mean that the Falcons made a correct decision? Probably not, right? I don't think anybody thinks it makes sense. But he's a top 10 NFL draft pick. So unless he turns out to be Trey Lance, which I may or may not whiff on that one, but unless he turns out to be Trey Lance, he is guaranteed to be a starting quarterback for a few NFL seasons. And it looks like it'll be a pretty good situation when he finally is able to get in there as a starter. So I'm going to take him. Like I said, I'll update my rankings on flogfantasy.com very, very soon. But he's probably going to be a late round one pick for me in Superflex. Now, going over to Rome, it was a pick that a lot of people were expecting at 9. It's interesting because I think that Caleb Williams is going to be great. I mean, I've been on record all offseason saying I think Caleb goes pick 1 to the Bears before the Justin Fields trade. And I think he steps into a situation that is significantly better than what the average number 1 overall draft pick sees. I think that this Bears offense is going to be great this next season. Even if Bears fans hate me for what I've said about Justin Fields for years. But while I think this is going to be a great offense, now you have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I don't expect to be great, but I do expect Keenan Allen to be a wide receiver that gets on the field and he's going to take target volume. He's not a field stretcher. He's not a speedy guy. He's someone that operates close to the line of scrimmage, and he's just going to be soaking up those cheap targets and that cheap volume of moving the sticks in this offense. So I think Keenan's probably going to hurt him in the short term. I think DJ Moore is going to be there for the long term. I do think that Rome in the long term is the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I think it's a pretty good offense overall. But I think on the whole, it's a good situation to be stepping into. Am I going to rank him over Neighbors? Hell no. Even if I think Caleb Williams is much better than Daniel Jones, I think Neighbors is a better prospect. And at the same time, Neighbors gets an offense where he can dominate with a 25% team target share relatively easily. So good spot for Rome. His ranking does not change for me. I think that there are pros and cons with him landing in Chicago. Now, the Vikings obviously crushed this draft. If they would have traded like 3 first-round picks to go up to 4 to get J.J. McCarthy, would have been a very different story. But here, them getting J.J. McCarthy at 10, really exciting. And if we go back to what we were talking about with how we evaluate quarterbacks, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm some expert quarterback guru scout. I can evaluate these guys on film coming into the NFL. Of course I can't. But what I can do, draft capital situation they're stepping into and rushing upside. And is there a better situation to step into than one that you're pretty much guaranteed to be a year 1 starter? Because Sam Darnold ain't that dude. And you are throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably, at least in my opinion. Jordan Addison, one of the best wide receiver 2s in the NFL, arguably, my opinion. TJ Hawkinson, when healthy, one of the best receiving tight ends in the NFL, arguably, my opinion. This is going to be a team that typically what we've historically seen is them airing it out. Now, of course, is that due to them having Kirk Cousins? Is that due to the overall offensive scheme that they run them in? So I don't know, but what I do know is it's arguably the best situation that any quarterback could have found themselves in this draft in particular, based off the teams that needed a quarterback. I'd say it was by far and away the number 1 spot. So he finds himself there. He gets draft capital inside the top 10. Is he Jaden Daniels running the football? Of course not. Can he go out there and possibly pick up 20 rushing yards a game? Maybe get 4 rushing touchdowns in a season? Yeah, I think he can. Which, I mean, is going to raise his floor-ceiling combo just a bit. So a beautiful spot for McCarthy. I would definitely rank him after the guys that go in the top 3. Obviously, he's not closing in on Caleb. He's not closing in on Daniels. He's not closing in on May. Despite, obviously, Penix getting drafted 2 picks earlier, we're still taking McCarthy well over Penix. Much better situation that he is stepping into based off of, 1, the availability to start early on, and 2, the weapons in said offense. So I think if we're looking at where McCarthy's going to end up, it's going to come down to if you are taking McCarthy in a Superflex league or if you were taking Rome in a Superflex league. If I am in a 10-team Superflex league where the quarterback supply and demand is going to be thrown out of whack, where on average everybody's going to have 3 to 4 starters, in that 10-team Superflex format, I probably just go ahead and take Rome. If it is a 12-team Superflex, I think it's kind of going to be up to you in your overall roster construction. If it is a 14-team Superflex league or more, then it's going to be easily the choice to go with McCarthy. Now, going over to our next guy, we're going to have a Mr. Bo Nix. If you are looking at Nix at 12, he gets decent draft capital. Obviously, the 5th quarterback in this class. He will be an immediate starter year 1. I could not name 2 other quarterbacks on this Denver Broncos team. Now, the situation he's stepping into is very much different than a Minnesota Vikings situation, where Bo Nix is going to be going into what I would argue to be one of the least talented rosters in the entire NFL, whether that's them getting screwed by the Russell Wilson deal, whether I don't know. But ultimately, this should be a spot where Courtland Sutton sees a small bump. Bo Nix is somewhat, he has upside, right? I'm kind of viewing him in the, I don't want to say the Will Levis light because obviously he has much better capital. He's guaranteed to be a starter for at least 1 to 2 years based off this draft capital. But I kind of view Bo Nix with the probability that he's a below average NFL starter, but he has upside for a lot more, right? So by no means am I going to go out there and draft him based off what I think his median projection is, because you also have to think with these quarterbacks in Penix and McCarthy and Bo Nix. I'm definitely putting McCarthy well ahead of the other two guys. I don't want to put them in the same bucket, but nonetheless, if you're looking at them and the range of outcomes on what they do year one, if they go out there and perform well year one, these are going to be the players that can exponentially increase in value going into year two. If Bo Nix goes out and he looks like an average NFL quarterback as a rookie, think about where he's going to be going into startup drafts heading into his second season. So if I'm looking at Bo Nix, I'm going to go through. I'm probably taking him over Penix as well, just because this is going to be someone that actually starts year one, where Penix you're going to have to wait 1 to 2 years. But I think this is another guy that goes round one of rookie drafts. I mean, it's just hard to ignore this quarterback draft capital. Now, going over to Brock Bowers, I understand that everybody hates the selection and everybody loves Michael Mayer. And I think Michael Mayer was a good prospect. Obviously, didn't show a lot year one, but also Trey McBride was in that same bucket. Trey McBride, good prospect, didn't show a lot year one, and goes out there and absolutely blows up year two. Now, do I expect that, or was I expecting that to be a guarantee with Michael Mayer? No. I think Michael Mayer had the upside to break out. I think he was a very talented player. But if you are the Raiders and you are sitting there and Brock Bowers is the best available guy on the board, you could use some help blocking. You could use another weapon in the offensive game. It's not like it's a situation where a team can't get 2 tight ends on the field and run 12 personnel and really get creative with their respective offense. I don't hate the Bowers pick from a real life NFL perspective. Obviously, fantasy, it's a different situation. Fantasy, it's going to be a very bad offense. It's going to be an offense where you also have to compete for targets with Devontae Adams. So it kills Michael Mayer, RIP Mayer. Let me see where he was in the tight end rankings and see where he falls. The thing with tight ends is the position is just so damn gross. It's like you don't really have much room to fall. Yeah, so he was tight end 14 in the rankings on the sites. And if you're looking at where he goes now, I mean, I'd probably rather have Frymuth over him. I'd definitely rather have Kmet over him. I personally ranked Michael Mayer over Dallas Goedert before the draft, but now I think I probably prefer Goddard. See, I think Michael Mayer is probably tight end 16, 17 at this point. Okay. Now, smooth this over. Looking at Brian Thomas Jr., phenomenal real-life fit with Jacksonville. Situation where you don't have Calvin Ridley anymore. You're sitting there with Gabe Davis, a vertical field stretching option, one of the very few wide receivers that I think can benefit an offense without taking volume in his own. We'll talk about Xavier Worthy in just 1 second. But you have Gabe Davis stretching defenses. You have Christian Kirk, who I always believed coming out of Texas A&M would be best in the slot. And now I think you have your prototypical alpha X wide receiver. I think you can have someone here that dominates targets for a quarterback that, in my mind, is a high upside player that can eventually be a top 6-ish quarterback in the NFL and provide this offense with a ton of passing volume. So I think it makes a ton of sense from an NFL perspective. I think it really helps Lawrence. I think it's a great fit for Brian Thomas Jr. himself. I think you're really happy right now if you're wanting to draft Thomas in rookie drafts. Now, going over to Xavier Worthy, let's get this out right away. Hook'em Lawrence, obviously, is my guy. The Chiefs trade up to get Worthy at 28. That's going to be a big deal here. The trade up. The Chiefs sign Hollywood Brown this offseason, but they sign Hollywood to a 1-year deal. Worthy's going to draw a lot of comps to Hollywood. I think it honestly makes sense. These are both super fast wide receivers that are decent route runners that are slightly undersized. I think you can honestly draw a comparison there. I know on the broadcast they called him Tank Dell. For the love of God, do not view him as Tank Dell. He's 10 times better. But stepping into this Chiefs offense, This is a situation where I think this helps the offense. It helps Worthy and is one of the very, 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 very rare instances where he is not going to take away from the other wide receivers in this offense. I don't think the addition of Xavier Worthy negatively impacts Rashee Rice too much, because Worthy, I don't want to just call him a field stretching option. Obviously, he can win at every level of the football field. He's not just a deep threat, but he does provide a vertical element. I don't think he's going to be a receiver coming out commanding 8, 9, 10 targets a game. I would love it to happen. It's probably not. He's probably going to win off of efficiency, right? So if this opens up a buy low window on Rashee Rice for you, and you're willing to take the risk with the suspension, if you can get Rice at a very cheap price tag of like a second round rookie pick right now, that may be an interesting play. Obviously, it is a beautiful spot for Xavier Worthy. We're going to look at our rankings in just 1 second and see exactly how high he can get to. But next guy, I don't even want to talk about him. I don't like him as a prospect. Ricky wasn't anything special in my mind. I think that you're in a situation, though, that the main impact is this means they're going to be moving off of one of Debo or Ayuk. They're not going to pay both wide receivers. We saw the Bills continuously trade back. We saw Carolina trade up to get Leggett at the very end of round 1. So, I mean, maybe Carolina would have been a destination for Brandon Ayuk. That looks a little less likely now. It looks like Buffalo could be Brandon Ayuk's home. Debo Samuel could be on the block as well. Obviously, it's not that San Francisco doesn't like those two stud receivers. It's more so just the money to make it work. And then looking at Leggett with the last pick here for Carolina, it's whatever. I didn't love him as a prospect. Obviously, there are targets available. Should be a pretty bad passing offense overall. But yeah, I don't necessarily think too much changes there. But let's answer couple questions. One with Rice real quick. Kyler Gibbs, DJ Moore, or Stroud 108 and Rice in a 12-team Superflex league. Give me DJ Moore over Rice. Give me Gibbs over the 108. Give me Stroud over Kyler. Honestly, I think it's a fair deal. I think it's up to you. Jacob says, what do you think the Patriots go round 2? 80 or Ladd? So yeah, that's something we need to talk about. I kind of want to focus in on AD Mitchell before we talk about Ladd real quick. Either way, I think if you are rooting for Drake May, you're rooting for the Patriots, you're really hoping they go wide receiver in round 2. I am not too concerned about Ladd falling out of round 1, because Ladd is one of those receivers that I think could be a better fantasy option than he can be a real life option. Typically, those super athletic wide receivers that are going to be field stretching pieces, they're going to go a little bit higher in the NFL draft than what their fantasy football value should indicate. And those wide receivers that are operating close to the line of scrimmage, that are going to soak up volume and soak up targets, they are going to go a little bit later in the draft than their fantasy football value would indicate. If that makes sense. If that makes sense. So when we see AD Mitchell, someone that supposedly came out and crushed the NFL Combine, has all the athleticism upside, y'all know I've been an AD Mitchell hater. I will repeat it. He was dead last in this class in yards per route run. Dead last. Yes, you had to compete with Worthy. Yes, you had to compete with Tavion. Yes, you had to compete with Brooks. Brian Thomas Jr. had to compete with Malik Neighbors, and at least he was middle of the road, right? And I'd be completely fine to say, okay, yeah, let's listen to the film guys. Let's listen to all the film guys screaming at us, telling us how good AD Mitchell is, how AD Mitchell is a bona fide stud, and we need to ignore all the metrics. And it was all Quinn Ewers' fault, even though if you're looking at a target share perspective, Ewers didn't even throw the ball to AD Mitchell. AD Mitchell didn't even draw targets at Georgia. It wasn't like he was just drawing targets and they were inaccurate. No, he just wasn't really getting open and wasn't drawing the target. I think AD Mitchell falling out of round 1 is more concerning than Ladd falling out of round 1. I think AD Mitchell has to dramatically fall down rankings. I think I want to say round 2, he's a much better pick. Round 2, he's a much better pick than when he was being projected to go round 1. If the Patriots take him round 2, I'm not going to bat an eye. But it is just a very interesting situation to see, I believe his sportsbook line coming into the draft, at least when I checked like a week ago, it was like it's 17.5 for his over under. So 3 little words says T Higgins a target now. Is he going to the Chargers? I don't know. I mean, I would assume that maybe Debo or Ayuk would be a little more likely to go to the Chargers. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Obviously, we saw the Bills and Chiefs make a trade. I would just assume that the Bengals maybe want to trade T Higgins to another AFC contender. But let's pull up some rookie rankings here. Let's figure out what we're going to look at. So these are the rookie rankings that you have on the site currently. And we're going to move. Here's what we're going to do. Just for everybody, we're going to have a couple different things changing on the site over the next few days. So right now, you know, if you want to get to the rookie rankings, you hit the prospects tab and you can go through and you can look at all the rookie rankings. What we're going to do probably tomorrow night is we're going to move these rookie rankings to the overall rankings. So instead, right now, when you go to the overall rankings, you'll see like the 101s between Jamar Chase and Justin Herbert. The 102s between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Kyler Murray, right? We're probably going to get rid of the rookie picks in these rankings and instead move the rookies into the overall rankings so you can see exactly how they stack up in comparison to veterans. And this prospects tab, which currently has the rookies now, we're most likely going to change this to Devy, just in case if you play Devy and you're interested in college football. I'm an idiot. I'm not going to be able to rank the Devy guys, but a couple of the guys at Dynasty Land and Fantasy Stock Exchange, they said that they would like to. But anyway, let's go through. Let's break this down. So these are not my rookie rankings right now. This is an average for everybody that's currently on the site. And I'm assuming these will get updated ASAP. So at least I'm going to update mine. I'll probably wait until after the drafts, after rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow, because obviously rounds 2 and 3 are going to get a ton of players as well. 1 stays the same. 2 stays the same. For my personal rankings, I will have Jaden Daniels over Drake May. I can't speak for the rest of the people on the site. And of course, if you want to see my rankings, just hit filter, add expert, Mason Dodd. Okay. But yeah, I will be sitting with Daniels ahead of May. I think I am going to keep Malik Neighbors at 5. The first big decision that I think we're going to have changing these rankings will be Rome versus McCarthy. Obviously, this is just for Superflex. 1 quarterback, it's easy. McCarthy's not even in play here. Can everybody spam the chat right now? What direction are you going to be going in? If you are in a 12-team Superflex format, please spam the chat. Would you rather have Rome or McCarthy? Let's see what people are saying. We got 1 vote Rome, 2 votes Rome. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it looks like pretty much the vast majority of people are going to go Rome here. I will tell you, I think they're neck and neck for me. If it looks like the vast majority of people are taking Rome, I will probably end up with more JJ McCarthy in my personal drafts, if that's going to be the value. Because if I'm sitting here, I think in a 10-team Superflex league, you for sure go Rome. I think in a 14-team, 16-team Superflex league, you for sure go McCarthy. 12-teamer, it's going to be tough. And I make all the rankings on the site for 12-team leagues. Obviously, we have our 1 quarterback and our Superflex rankings on the site. You can find both. But anyway, we're going to have some combo of Rome McCarthy. Then at 8, this is going to be a big change as well. Bowers doesn't find himself in a good spot. I would make the argument that Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy and Bo Nix all find themselves in advantageous situations. Oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do this? So the 4 guys that are going to be in this bucket are going to be Bowers, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy, and Bo Nix. Let's throw Michael Penix in there too. I think Penix is at the very bottom of that list, though. Penix will be in the bottom guy in that tier. So we're having to figure out between Bo Nix, Bowers, Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr. I have no freaking idea how to do that. I know we're going to have Penix at the bottom of that 5. Those 4 guys will be in some order at that point. And then it's too early to know if we're just going to throw Leggett right afterwards, because I really do want to see what the situations look like for the guys that go in round 2. So hypothetically, if the Bills make a move and they go get A.D. Mitchell, obviously Mitchell's going to be well ahead of someone like Leggett. Hypothetically, if the Cowboys go out there and they draft Jonathan Brooks in the 2nd round, I'd say Brooks is probably ahead of Ricky, probably ahead of Leggett as well. So I don't want to commit to anything outside of those picks right now. So let me just recap in my mind, because I'm going to have to go through and I'm going to have to... Why am I even doing it like this? Why am I showing it on y'all's end? I can just go through and I can just update my rankings on the site right now. Let's play around with this. Prospects. Yeah, so this is the creator view on the site. Just, I mean, I'd imagine that none of y'all have seen this. Yeah, so here are the prospects. Going through quarterback rankings, we're going to keep this the same. Running back, obviously, nothing happened. Wide receiver, Worthy's now ahead of Mitchell. Leggett, for now, is probably going to be up there. Ricky has to fly up this board. I'll probably put him there just in case. I mean, just until we see some more information. I'm looking at the Superflex rankings. For now, I know the majority of y'all want Rome. I'm probably going to go McCarthy. I just think to be next to Jefferson, to be with Addison, to be with Hawkinson, to get the capital. I don't know. I want that. We're going to have to move the quarterbacks way up. We're going to move Bo Nix, Michael Penix. So I think Penix is going to be 12 no matter what. I think Penix is 12. What we're debating here is 8 through 11. Yeah, these guys are going to be the same tier. So I think J.J. Romer in their own tier. Then I think you have the tier of Nix, Worthy, Thomas, Bowers. I think you have Penix in his own tier. And then after that, God knows what. We got Austin says Bowers has to be 11. Sadly, Pretty Ricky, I guess his file on his picture got corrupted. He does not have one right now. Yeah, I guess we honestly have to move Ricky ahead of Leggett under the assumption that Debo or Ayuk will get traded. Can y'all please spam the chat? What do you disagree with these rankings? Because obviously this is instant reaction. This happened 5 minutes ago. We have a 10-deep Superflex. We have Stroud, Caleb, Daniels, May, 6-point passing touchdown. Receiver, we have Malik, Marv, Nico, Moore. Oh my gosh. Should I trade Neighbors and Daniels for Amon-Ra? Triple flex. I would say no. I know in a 10-team Superflex league, depth's not going to matter as much, but I still think you're giving up too much. Beefstar says Worthy is overrated here. Worthy at 9. I like Brian Thomas Jr. more as a prospect. I know Bo Nix is high. Just the thing is, in a Superflex league, if he goes out there and he's just a mid QB, I think is going to dramatically increase in value. Honestly, I am less worried about the Bo Nix ranking in comparison to the Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, Brock Bowers ranking. Neighbors at 3 over Daniels. Penix needs to fall. Oh, definitely not. Penix easily at 12 for me. Yeah, Worthy is getting the Chiefs. I mean, I gave Rice the Chiefs bump last year. I drafted a lot of Rashee Rice just based off the fact that he was in KC. And they traded up to get Worthy as well. Of course, Penix is going to be the backup, but this is Dynasty. If it was redraft, I agree with you. Brian Thomas over Worthy. I think Brian Thomas is a better NFL receiver. I think, dear God. I'm going to keep it as is. I'm going to publish them right now. Just in case any of you sickos have your drafts happening right this second. And I'll constantly be updating them. Probably through the entire week. And I'll for sure have the 1 quarterback and Superflex rankings updated for y'all right after day 2 tomorrow, because I know all my rookie drafts are starting this weekend, so I know how important it is to get that out, and wanted to get y'all some instant reactions. Appreciate y'all. Thank you. Ton of fun today. Ton of good landing spots, ton of bad ones. But yeah, of course, if you want to go through, check out all the Dynasty Rookie Draft Guides. If you want to break down your Dynasty team, you want me to try to figure out what you should do in your Dynasty Rookie Draft. If you want to get all my Dynasty rankings, pretty much all the content from all your favorite creators, it's all on flockfantasy.com. Code FLOCK, get you hooked up with 30% off any subscription. And yours truly will break down your team in a podcast. But thank you again. Really do appreciate y'all. Really hope y'all enjoyed your Thursday night. And yeah, keep posting on what happens tomorrow.